Hey, so is it just me, or are there adverts for 3D printers everywhere? Some of them actually look like really good deals. Well, 2 months ago I found a deal that I really couldn't pass up, and I took the plunge. I got hold of a Photon S for about £130, but I know they're significantly cheaper than that these days. It's an older model, but the price did seem irresistible at the time. And here's my experience of going from all traditionally handcrafted stuff to 3D printing. I soon found there was a super wide selection of models and scenery available. For the first month or two, I ran the machine constantly, night and day, 24 hours, something was always printing. Seems like home printing has removed a lot of the barriers that were previously involved in mass producing minis, so an absolute ton of really talented sculptors can get their miniatures directly into the hands of the people that want them, bypassing all the production process. Maybe, you know, some of us who have degrees in animation and didn't know what to do with them might find a way to use that degree now. To throw out a few names of the companies that are producing my favourite sort of files at the minute, we've got Loot Studios, we've got STL Miniatures, Mini Monster Mayhem, to name but a few. But you don't just have to rely on existing files and sculptors. With free software like Blender, you can sculpt your own files to print at home. I think after only a couple of days, I designed and printed a washer to hold my UV lamp to the wall, and then after about a week, I designed and printed some windows for a haunted manor I'm working on. Then I moved on to a mine shaft, then I moved on to an adventurer's camp, and, you know, more's to come. It's amazing what you can do, and I could never have achieved this level of sort of detail with just foam or balsa wood. When looking at strictly the cost of the resin as well, there is a massive price difference between what you would pay in the shop and what you can print yourself. Something like this, about 20p's worth of resin in here. This big guy, about £1. It's excellent. Now that is a very blinkered perspective. You're not just going to be looking at the cost of the resin itself. So that leads me into the not so good things that I found about the resin printing. The initial cost of the resin printer itself can be quite high. I know I talked about my Photon S being only about $99 at current price, but that is an older model and there are drawbacks to that. There's also surrounding costs that you might not initially consider. Things like curing equipment, cleaning equipment, the cleaning chemicals themselves, tools, replacements, even the more expensive resins if you decide to go that way. Because you also need to be aware that there are maintenance costs involved with the printer. The screens don't last forever. I think at time of recording, there's about 2,000 hours worth of light left in my screen, maybe less, probably less. And that will need replacing for about £70, which is pretty much the cost of the printer. Now that lifetime is improved on newer monochrome models, but that's for the future me. So what other costs are there besides monetary? Time. Time is a big factor, because the time you put in can directly influence the quality of the prints that you're putting out. Getting the exposure settings right can make the difference between blobby, undetailed messes and nice crisp features on your minis. And those carefully dialed exposure settings can change depending on the colour of resin you've got, what brand, even the temperature of the room. And just to illustrate that, I did a lot of testing to find out that my ideal exposure time was about 7 seconds per layer, but then I moved my printer from over there to over there by the open window, and the times just went out the window. I had 2 frustrating days of failed prints until I looked for help on a Discord group and found out that the temperature can affect the resin's curing time. You have to walk a careful line between under and over exposure. Too much exposure and you'll lose detail in your finer areas. Too little exposure and your supports will break and your prints will look like puddles. So let's talk about failures. Not me. Yes, I've had many failures. They are frustrating as anything. But luckily, I do keep finding uses for these pieces, so they're not going completely to waste, but there is nothing more disheartening than walking into a 6-hour print to find nothing stuck to the build plate. And even if you do have your settings locked down, there might be the possibility that your printer's just going to freak out sometimes. Ever since upgrading to the latest firmware, my printer has this tendency of trying to print this tartan pattern. I have heard anecdotally this is a memory issue. I just have to remember to turn my machine off periodically and not print large files in sequence. If you're the sort of person who's not willing to spend time diagnosing faults and digging through settings, maybe 3D printing isn't for you. And so my final negative for 3D printing is the hunger. I want everything. I want a bigger machine, I want a faster machine, I want finer details, I want all the STL files, because if you sign up for a patron, they're like 1/8 of the price of buying the pack afterwards. So I have to have them all, and I can't, which makes me sad. So, knowing what I know now, would I do the same thing again? And the answer is absolutely 100% yes. Despite wanting to cry and beg the machine just to work at times, I still absolutely love the possibilities and the creative freedom that this tool gives me. Just having that in my arsenal makes me 100 times, 10 times better crafter. The detail I can get from things I build in Blender and then print out completely blows away anything I can do by hand with foam or with wood, and that's the main reason why I bought it, despite getting sidetracked by all the minis and the monsters. Will it replace my handcrafted stuff? No, I don't think it will. Will it make it better? Definitely.